Hey everyone, this is Ryan DeGregorio, host of Mind Bending Astronomy. Thanks for joining me, and welcome to today's episode. Last time, we visited the planet Neptune, and today we're going to conclude our tour of the solar system by visiting Pluto and a few other dwarf planets. And as you may already know, Pluto is no longer a planet. In 2006, the IAU, or the International Astronomical Union, decided that we need a more rigorous definition for a planet. And so they set up three criteria. In order to be a planet, it must go around the sun, it must have undergone hydrostatic equilibrium, which is just a fancy term saying that it must be round, and then third, it must clear its neighborhood around its orbit. And so we'll describe what these are. First, it must go around the sun. Pluto has no problem doing that. Although it's extremely far away, it's about 4 billion miles, it does indeed make a perfectly elliptical orbit around the sun. Second, Pluto is round, and if you look at any images taken by the New Horizons probe, you can definitely see it's a pretty perfect circle. Now the third thing is where Pluto has trouble. Pluto does not go around the sun by itself. Clearing its neighborhood means it must not be influenced by any other planet. And so Neptune is the reason Pluto can't do this. Neptune and Pluto are in what's called a gravitational resonance. And in the last episode, I described that Neptune makes 3 orbits around the sun in exactly the same time that Pluto makes 2. And so they have this weird dance going on in which they're tugging on each other's orbits. And for that reason, we needed to demote Pluto. And in fact, Pluto and Neptune actually switch places. For some time, Neptune is farther away from the sun than Pluto is. And funny enough, Pluto does take a very long time to go around the sun. The time between its discovery and its demotion is less than the time it takes to make one trip around the sun. And it was discovered back in the 1930s by Clyde Tombaugh, and it was named Pluto by his 11-year-old daughter, Venetia Burney. What's another interesting thing about Pluto is it is crazy cold on the surface. Temperatures can plummet down to minus 400 Fahrenheit. And if you think absolute zero, the coldest temperature possible, is minus 458 Fahrenheit. And so what you may imagine to be liquids and gases here on Earth are probably frozen solid anywhere on Pluto. And so you probably have methane rocks and water ice as hard as steel. Now, Pluto, as I had mentioned before, is also a crazy distance away from the sun. It's about 40 astronomical units. And an astronomical unit is the distance from the sun to the Earth. So you'd have to make that trip 40 times to get to Pluto. It's so far that the New Horizons probe that finally made it past Pluto in 2015 took 9 years to get there. And these probes travel at over 10,000 miles an hour. So it took quite a while to get there. And we'll go into a few dwarf planets because Pluto is not by itself. It does have some friends. And included are Ceres, Makemake, Haumea, Quaoar, and Sedna, just to name a few. Ceres became a little bit well known because it was discovered as a planet in between Mars and Jupiter. But we didn't want to call it a planet because it was in the middle of the asteroid belt. And so we considered it to be just a really large asteroid. But since it was spherical, we decided, you know what? It can be a dwarf planet just like Pluto, where it has very much the same characteristics. And then Sedna is a really interesting one because it has an enormous orbit around the sun. If you think of just a tennis ball being the size of Pluto's orbit, Sedna's orbit would be several feet in in length, from perihelion to aphelion. And those are terms that mean the closest approach and the farthest approach. And that's all it for the solar system. We'll dive into something else next week. Stay tuned.